All right, guys, we've covered most everything in the first two foldables we did for section 2.1, but we just do have a little bit of notes. It won't take too long. It's not that bad. So we're going to start off with some vocabulary terms. Now, a declarative statement, maybe you know from English, maybe you don't. It's just a statement that is true or false. So it's just a statement like the sky is blue, the sky is green. I am smart. I mean, it's a statement that you can say definitively, yes, that's true, or no, that's false. There's nothing left to be imagined, I guess. A conditional statement, like we have already said, it's an if-then statement. And it is made up of two declarative statements. Okay, so conditional statements, remember, some can be true and some can be false, but it is two declarative statements put together by the words if and then. Okay, the hypothesis of the conditional statement, I'm going to put here, it's the if part of the statement. Or I'm going to put in parentheses the first declarative statement. And we'll do some example of these. It'll make a little more sense. Okay, and now the conclusion is the then part of the statement. And I'm going to put in parentheses the second declarative statement. All right, now let's do a couple of examples. So just keep in mind, think to like science class. You need to ask yourself, what comes first, a hypothesis or conclusion? And you should know without me telling you that the hypothesis comes first and the conclusion comes second. Okay, so if we're going to underline the hypothesis, how about I just highlight? So let's put the hypothesis in green and the conclusion in yellow. Okay, now I want to make something very clear. The if and the then, so the word if and the word then are neither part of the hypothesis or part of the conclusion. Okay, it's neither one. We don't underline or circle or highlight in this case the if or the then. That's not what it is. So if we look at part A, it says, if I do my homework, then I will do well on my test. Well, the hypothesis, it's not if I do my homework. It's just a declarative statement. I do my homework. And then the conclusion is the second half. I will do well on my test. So notice here, the if and the then are not part of either one of those. So I'm just going to X through it. Okay, so same thing down here. Last month was May is my hypothesis. Next month is July is my conclusion. All right, so let's look at example 2. It says rewrite the current statements as a conditional statement in if-then form. All right, now B, let's do B first just because B is easier. So it says all 30-degree angles are acute angles. Okay, so we're going to basically, that's one statement of fact, and we're basically going to separate that into two statements with an if and a then part. So think of this as two statements put together. So I can write if an angle is 30 degrees, then it is an acute angle. Okay, so notice like the main ideas are the same, but the wording's a little bit different. All right, let's look at A now. Let's think of cause and effect here. Okay, so is being in France causing us to be in Paris? Or is being Paris causing us to be in France? Okay, so if we're in Paris, then we have to be in France. If we're in France, we don't have to be in Paris. Guys, Paris is a city, France is a country. Okay, so if I said, if I am in France, then I am in Paris. Well, that is not an accurate statement. We could write that because conditional statements can be false, but let's write it as a true conditional statement. So let's write it as if I am, or if, I guess we'll stay consistent with what they have. If you are in Paris, comma, then you are in France. Okay, hopefully this isn't too difficult for you. All right, let's look at some negations. Now we've kind of talked about this in our foldables. Negation is just not, and it's written as a this, and it is not. Okay, so write the negation of each statement. So if I say the ball is red, okay, so what would be the opposite of the ball is red? It'd be the ball is not red. Okay, now be careful here. Don't say the ball is blue, the ball is black. It can be anything other than red. It is not red. All right, so the cat is not black. What happens if that is a false statement? Well, that would just be the cat is black. Would that be the opposite of the cat is not black? Or you can think of it as the cat is not black. That's kind of complicated though. Makes my brain hurt thinking about it. All right, and part C. The sky is blue. So how would I negate that statement? The sky is not blue. All right, let's do just examples of conditional, converse, inverse, contrapositive. I know we've already done at least one in our foldable, but this is kind of a big idea, so let's do more. So here we're giving that P is you're a guitar player. Okay, so that's my P. And Q is you are a musician. Okay, so I'm going to go through and highlight the Q's in purple and my not Q's. And then my P's or my not P's in green. So notice they kind of go back and forth. All right. And these are all if-then statements. Okay, so conditional statement. If, well, P is my hypothesis. P is if you are a guitar player, comma, then my Q, you are a musician. If you are a guitar player, then you are a musician. Okay, the converse now is if Q, then P. So if, well, Q is you are a musician, comma, then, well, my P is you are a guitar player. All right, let's look at part C, the inverse. Now notice integrating these not P and not Q. Okay, so if my P is you are a guitar player, my not P would be if you are not a guitar player, comma, then, well, not Q is you are not a musician. All right, last but not least, contrapositive. Okay, not Q implies not P. So if you are not, my Q is you're a musician. So if you are not a musician, comma, then my not P, you are not a guitar player. All right, so let's look at these. Now we want to find whether or not they are true or false. So if you are a guitar player, then you are a musician. Well, guys, isn't the definition of musician someone who's good at music? So I'm guessing if you consider yourself a guitar player, that means you play the guitar very well. So I would say this statement is a true statement. If you can play the guitar well, then you're a musician. Now, the converse of that, if you are a musician, then you are a guitar player, well, what if you're I don't know, a flutist? You're a musician, right? So just because you're a musician doesn't mean you play the guitar. So I would say this is false. All right, now C says if you are not a guitar player, then you are not a musician. So once again, you could be a flute player, which would make you a musician. But if you're not a guitar player, that doesn't mean you're not a musician. So that would be a false statement as well. Maybe. Come on, pen. There we go. Okay, now the contrapositive. If you are not a musician, then you are not a guitar player. Well, yes, that is an accurate statement. If you're not a musician, then you can't be great at the guitar. So that's true. So notice that the conditional statement and the contrapositive are both true. The converse and the inverse are both true. So if you look back at that first foldable, when we had equivalent statements, we said conditional and contrapositive were equivalent. Converse and inverse were equivalent. So those pairs of statement will always have the same truth value. So if the conditional statement is true, the contrapositive will always be true. Or if the conditional statement is false, the contrapositive will also be false. And then the same thing for the converse and inverse. Those are pairs. They will always have the same truth value.